Hello everyone, my name is Akal and I am a somatic therapist. If you'd like to find out the details about the kind of work I do, you can check out my website, which I have posted down below this video. Something else is down below this video, I have posted a website which is called Vault of the Heavens. That's where you can go to, discover what your nakshatras are. And the specific placements you want to look at in your birth chart are your sun, your moon, and the ascendant. The moon generally represents more of sort of your internal environment, the sort of how the energy is moving. So it's kind of like the mind and the emotions, essentially. So whereas your sun is your expression, and et cetera, et cetera. So essentially all the planets have some sort of nakshatra, but again, sun, moon, ascendant are the three most sort of prominent or important placements. So today what we're covering is Uttarashada. Uttarashada Nakshatra is in a lot of ways very similar to Purvarashada, which was happened just before this. I think the difference really has to do with you have to look at the rulership. So the rulership of Uttarashada is the sun. Purvarashada, it was Venus. So there's a difference in energies in terms of so the overall goal, very similar, but how it's approached in the overall sort of outcome is slightly different. So both of these are, I would consider, generally very prosperous, and abundant placements. However, Purvarashada was a little bit more individualistic. Uttarashada, not so much. Now, what I mean by that is this. So the sun, you've got Rajasic energy, and you have Sattvic energy. Those are the two combinations. The combinations of those two energies are what essentially detail the sun. I'm going to do some videos in the future. They're going to go over all the planets. This particular one is interesting to me. Like, I think about the sun, and I was like, well, why is it Rajasic and then Sattvic? I mean, how is that in any way represent the sun? Well, Rajasic is activity. It's movement. It's activity. And so the sun does what? It radiates. Sattva, so radiates into what? Clarity. So when the sun comes up in the morning, it brings clarity to the earth plane. It shines light. So people who have this as a rulership in their nakshatras, essentially what we're looking at is this very, it's a very intense energy. It's very clarifying energy, and it's a very extroverted energy. It's energy that's social, so we got keeping that in mind. So the previous nakshatra, also social, because it was ruled by Venus. Venus is inherently social, but Venus is different. Venus at its base, once again, is Rajasic, but what's being expressed out in the material world is Tamasic. So Tamasic means inertia, density, material focus. So what does that mean? Well, Purvarashada was considerably more self-sensual. Venus is about desire. It's about desire and sensate pleasures on a lot of levels. So the sun here, though, is not about that. It's about expression. So that's why these two things are generally different. So even though the focus, both of these have Sagittarian influence. Purvarashada was entirely in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, very expansive, religious, ritualistic, spiritual. Uttarashada is 1/4 in Sagittarius and the remainder in Capricorn. So meaning that we start to see the influence of Saturn play in here, but we still have some Jupiter energy, and so because there's this Jupiter energy that's still kind of playing out, and how you can see this is if you look at the base gunas here. So the base gunas, we have sattva. So the way to look at the base guna, and the primary level guna here, is that, and again, the whole third of the zodiac from Sagittarius through Pisces is sattvic base. The reason for that is it's the spiritualization process. You see sattvic in someone's chart, you're going to see the movement towards clarity. Well, the movement towards clarity is spiritualization. So in this particular case, Jupiter is sattvic energy, which radiates into activity. So generally how that's described is it's coming from a place of clarity, but it's looking at what to go towards. So Jupiter energy is generally, like I said, considered very expansive. I'll get into Saturn a little, maybe in another video, but Saturn's kind of the opposition of that. It's sattvic into tamasic, which is contraction. So this Jupiter basic energy, which applies to everything in Sagittarius, has, like I said, it lends Sagittarians to having this, again, think about the symbol of Sagittarius. It's the arrow concept, this sort of bow and arrow. It's shooting an arrow towards some sort of goal, whatever that goal may be. So what is the goal? With Uttarashada and Purvarashada, the goal is universalization. It's to follow the path towards unity. Purvarashada, it was psychological transformation. Again, both of these signs have a shit ton of psychological transformation. I mean, a lot. There's a lot going on in their psyches. So this constant pace of transformation means that they can sometimes bounce around in terms of what it is that they're interested in. So early on in their progression, the energies want to go towards these, various, spiritual and religious paths. And again, this is very innate for those folks. However, what ends up happening is that sometimes there's something that happens in life. And I'm going to go into the padas. The padas are essentially the divisions within this particular placement. And this is what truly differentiates Uttarashada from Purvarashada. Uttarashada is interested in the universalization for the purpose and for no other purpose than universalization. So the god that rules Uttarashada is called the I mispronounce this, I'm sorry, Vishvadevas. The Vishvadevas essentially, I like to think about it as this, which is the idea of the universe as a god. So the totality of everything as a god. So these folks, what they'll start to do is they'll start to see those connections in life which unite us, which connect us. And so the transformational process that occurs for this nakshatra go through the padas. So we have Jupiter in the first, there's 4 padas, 4 divisions. Jupiter, Saturn, and then Jupiter once again. So essentially what that means is that we have this religious expansiveness. Again, it's this desire to high-mindedness, philosophy, things like that. And then something happens in life. Anytime you see Saturn playing out here, you start to see stuff happen in life. So Bipin Bihari, who wrote this fantastic book, if you can see that, he basically made this statement, and this was, I thought, a very good quote. He says, with Uttarashada, the individual is sacrificed on the cross of universal consciousness. So this path is not so much about this sort of, again, Purvarashada was more about self-sensuality, it was about feeling and sensing and being sensitive, but the individual is processing all this change. Uttarashada, there's a self-sacrificing aspect that plays out here. Ultimately, these folks tend to move towards, I would say, sort of social work, again, just social careers in general, but careers in which they're being of service and being helpful. And the assumption here is that they've cultivated empathy. Without the cultivation of empathy, and how do we cultivate empathy? We cultivate empathy by cultivating sensitivity. These folks have an enormous amount of activity, a lot of activity. The sun shines, it radiates, it's very intense. That activity has to kind of be pulled back in. So it's about finding ways in which this individual can connect to their core, to their center. Their path, like I said, it's very much about sort of earthly actions in a lot of ways, So let's see, how do I say that? I guess their earthly actions are spiritual goals. So somebody told me once this concept of bringing heaven to earth, and I think they used the word hierophant. and it was in discussion of tarot. It may have been magician or hierophant. Don't take my word on that. So now the thing is this idea of bringing heaven to earth it's a wonderful thing, because what it is it allows us to sort of ground our spiritual understandings and our spiritual experiences into action. And this whole process, you start to cultivate this degree of sensitivity, and this degree of sensitivity allows you essentially to connect to other human beings, to connect to people. And again, this is very social, very extroverted. So when they're connecting to other people, their sensitivities will start to perk up a bit. And so what they're developing is they're developing empathy. And as they develop empathy, they start to develop humility. Humility is the very positive expression of this particular sign. The overall impulse of this particular sign is what they call cosmic unity. So this idea of cosmic unity, meaning finding things that bring people together. And again, you're going to see that with these folks. A lot of bringing people together. So, let's see, I was talking about... So going back to the padas, again, these two, the second pada and the third pada, both being kind of ruled by Saturn, what we're seeing here is we're seeing the energy of contraction. So at some point in these folks' life path, they're going to lose something. They're going to deal with hardships. These hardships are wonderful. Pain, fear, and suffering is what evolves us. And Saturn is here in a lot of ways to bring that pain, fear, and suffering. So people have all this dread about Saturn, like, oh, where's Saturn in my chart? And if Saturn's in my whatever house, it's going to bring all these hardships. It's a spiritualization. The planet really is about spiritualization. The planet really is about evolving us. So it's through the path of pain, fear, and suffering that we start to stop, pause, and go, oh, I need to look at this, I need to look at that. And so this idea of psychological transformation that occurs because your material prosperity was taken away, because some incident happened in your life that jarred you into awareness. Again, this is just how the earth plane works. So these Saturnian energies, like I said, they humble the person. And that humbling the person brings them onto the same level. Anytime we see this like sun energy, you can go back to like Leo, for instance, in the zodiac, you go to the Leo, all the descriptions there were self-centered. Yeah, also magnanimous. Also very bright and rich and helpful and service-oriented. But if it's, again, operating inauthentically, what do we end up getting? We end up getting self-centeredness. So these folks, again, the assumption is that they're operating on some sort of authentic path. And when I'm doing all these videos, that's basically what I'm talking about, is how are these folks operating authentically? If they're operating authentically, we see the interplays of the Gunas, I guess, transpiring very clearly. So two other things I want to cover before I go into the exercise that's associated with this particular nakshatra. And again, the exercise associated with this, which is projection 18, it's called the creator. And I thought that was a pretty cool term because that's what this energy of the sun is. It's this very, very creative energy. It's rich and shiny. And so, and again, this is always said, anywhere you see nakshatras or you see the sun's influence in the zodiac, you always see this creative life force, because that's what the sun is. Nothing really exists without the presence of the sun. The sun goes out, we're all gone. So something else that needs to be mentioned about this Saturn energy, Saturn pushes us towards, I guess, materialization in a lot of ways. It forces us to be disciplined about the material things. It forces us to look critically at the material things. It forces us oftentimes towards discipline and religion and a lot of different things, being a bit conservative. That's another aspect of Saturn energy, is it forces a contraction and a desire to conserve. So that energy, that sort of energy that humbles an individual, that tells them there is less than you think there is, that restriction, one of the things that it does is that it kind of starts to cultivate this path towards an ego death. This idea of, I guess, the sort of ultimate nothingness of self. Essentially, the self, the ego, the personality, the mind is this sort of illusory thing. In meditation, when you're completely centered, you can kind of see your ego play its games out. And so because your ego is playing its games out, it's looking at this and that and different mundane activities you have to do during the day, making lists, whatever it is that your ego does. I know mine does ridiculous things. What ends up happening, though, is that in meditation you can see this happening. So because you can see your ego functioning, what does that mean? It means you're not that. You're not your ego. That's significant. It's incredibly significant. And this is partially the influence of Saturn. Saturn will essentially give you hardships so that you can discover, I need something solid. I need something to hold on to. And what is it that we can truly hold on to in life? That's our core. It's our center. So that's the influence of Saturn in this pada. And then, like I said, eventually, once these folks have moved towards that authentic self, they've recognized their core, they expand back out and they discover all sorts of richness through service, through being social, through communication, through very earthly things. The path of this nakshatra, which I forgot to mention earlier, which is moksha. Moksha means liberation. So again, this urge towards unity, which is conceptually the purpose of yoga, tai chi, qigong, etc., there's always this movement towards unity. Yoga essentially means to yoke or to bring together. That energy so this path is very much about moksha. It's about liberation. And I should have mentioned this earlier. However, what's underlining the moksha for these folks, like what's driving them along that path, and that has to do with the sattvic energy. The sattvic energy is essentially the desire to merge with one's universal nature. It's the desire to find clarity and to find union. So, with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I connected Uttarashada with projection 18 from Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. All right, so here's Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. Great book. My book needs replaced. It's in bad shape. All right, so what we got going on here is we have a universal mind, or chitta. This is the flow chart, basically coming from the most basic element, which is ether. And then we're following as creation condenses into more solid forms. So air, fire, water, earth. Greater density as we move forward. Now, Uttarashada, again, at its base, was sattvic. So what we do is we follow the flowchart here. And so the second level is rajasic, or positive mind. So that leads us to this aspect which he calls the missionary. And then we have on the final level, once again, we have more sattvic, and it says N, which is sattvic or neutral. And that is projection 18, the creator. So now what we do is we flip through the book until we get to projection 18, the creator, pursuing the art of cohesiveness. And I like to use cohesive. Cohesive, once again, is this implying in some ways this unifying aspect. So these people are here to bring cohesion between people, essentially between, amongst humanity, and also ultimately the unity of our connectivity to all that is, the planet itself, to nature, and the exploration into nature. And here's the meditation, which is done for 3 to 11 minutes. So it's kind of a complex meditation. So in the next segment, I'll go ahead and show you how to do this exercise. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the exercise now, which is projection 18, the creator. So this exercise has 3 parts. I think I mentioned in the explanation about this nakshatra in the beginning that the energy, it's constantly, well, just how all the energies associated with this nakshatra are constantly driving this individual to discover their core. And again, because these folks have a lot of intensity to them in terms of activity and focus. So again, very focused and a lot of activity. So this exercise really is about harnessing or consolidating rather that focus, that immense amount of activity into their center. So the first part of the exercise is done for, it says 11 to 31 minutes. Be realistic with yourself. If you can't do 11 to 31 minutes, do 3 minutes, do 5 minutes, whatever you can do. But again, if this Uttarashada, if this is your particular nakshatra, you're going to want to kind of master this practice and just see what happens. And again, keep in mind that it takes 40 days in order for your nervous system to transform. So the first part of this exercise you're going to do is you're going to bring your right hand up like you're pledging. Hold it right about the level of the shoulder. Left hand, bring the elbow to the ribs. You want to flex that palm down as if receiving some water. And that's the posture. And of course you want to pull the spine upright, which means pushing your pelvic floor down. And once the pelvic floor is planted, you feel rooted, then you want to go ahead and bring the chin down very slightly, which helps elongate the neck, and lift the front part of the body, lift the chest from sternum up. I mean, this is essentially what neck lock does. A lot of people have asked me about neck lock. So if you pull neck lock, it'll lift the chest. If you plant your pelvis, it'll adjust the lower part of the spine. So between the head and the pelvis, the spine is able to be adjusted. So once again, right hand pledge, left hand at ribs, flexed. So the breath is, you want to get down to where you're doing 4 breaths a minute. This breath is actually to calm the fire element, meaning we're inhaling through the mouth, pursed lips, exhaling out the nose. So this is interesting. Why does this breath calm the fire element? The fire element is activity and motion and movement. And again, Uttarashada has got a lot of activity, energy, and movement. So what we're doing is we're calming the fire element here by reducing the motion on the diaphragm. If the diaphragm slows down, the mind slows down, hence cooling the fire element, reducing activity. So the breath, like I said, you want to draw it in through pursed lips. You want to follow that stream of air, because if you have pursed lips, you're going to notice it forms a very fine stream. And you're going to inhale in that very fine stream. And you want to at least inhale for about 7 to 8 seconds. And then when you're exhaling, you want to at least exhale for 7 to 8 seconds. And this will put you in position to doing 4 breaths a minute. The slower the breath, the less mental activity. Again, keep that in mind. So you can eventually build up to 1 breath. And then I guess one final thing I want to say in terms of the pacing of the breathing here is, I remember reading, actually several yogis that I've talked to and read, etc., have expressed that the point of doing pranayama isn't to get more energy. It isn't to any of those things. It's not to breathe more or breathe less. It's actually to stop breathing. Because when you cease breathing, the diaphragm ceases moving, and you're just in a place of stillness. And that stillness is where we go with the second step here. So the stillness brings you closer to your core. And so this whole exercise is about pulling you into your core. Remember, that's what I said during the explanation of this exercise. It's all about these individuals being guided to their core, either through the actions of Saturn, which bring you pain, fear, and suffering, mishaps in life, losing money, etc., etc. Everything really is about pulling you towards your core. So the next part of this exercise, so after you do this, again, breathing, inhale, lips, exhaling out the nose. Again, 4 breaths a minute. Eyes, I should have mentioned. Eyes are on the tip of the nose. Now, how I bring the eyes to the tip of the nose is you want to look up and to the left, but don't turn your head, just move your eyes. You want to inhale, full breath. Then you want to roll your eyes up and to the right. Retain the breath. Then you want to roll your eyes directly up. Retain the breath. Then you want to exhale all the air out and then roll your eyes down to the tip of the nose, and that'll help you bring your gaze to the tip of the nose. So again, you want to do this first step for, it says 11 to 31 minutes, do 3 minutes at least. The next part of this is you're going to then close your eyes, bring your left hand over your heart, and your right over your left. And it says here, have the thought of stillness. I don't get that. I say just be present. Just be. The idea of having a thought of stillness implies that it's not really stillness, it's a thought. Thoughts are movement. So again, you can have the thought of stillness, that somehow helps, but for me, it's really just about presence. So you want to find that still place within yourself and just simply be present. So after you do this for about 3 minutes, and what I do suggest you do during this, right over left, hand over the heart center, I suggest you smile inwardly. So and again, it helps to literally smile when smiling inwardly. Now, what will smiling inwardly do? Well, it'll bring you more peace. The impact of a smile it's incredible. It will bring you more love and light, and you will perceive, and this is why I like the inner smile. The inner smile will allow you to perceive your internal environment more clearly. It will essentially behave like a flashlight. You'll be able to, put light on whatever it is you're smiling at. So let's say you just smile at your liver. If you smile at inwardly at your liver, you will shine light on your liver. That's how it works. It's a great exercise. So now the second part of this, I think I mentioned this, but just in case, I'll say it again. So the second part of this exercise is 3 minutes. Now moving on to the third aspect of this exercise, what you're going to do is you're going to bring your hands into a prayer. You're going to put your thumbs at the brow. So you want to have your thumbs kind of dug up underneath your brow. So with the thumbs dug up underneath the brow, what it'll allow you to do is it'll allow you also to anchor your head down. So you want to create a balance of pressure between the thumbs and the brow. So I'm pushing up with my hands, with my thumbs, while I'm pressuring down with my brow. And this hits some meridian lines, which I won't go into. But one of the things that this will do, like I said, is it's basically accentuating a neck lock, which will help pull up the spine. It'll help lift the chest. Now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be resonating a mantra with our hands in this position. So the mantra is Ong, that's O-N-G, Namo, N-A-M-O, Guru, G-U-R-O-O, Dev, D-E-V, and then Namo, N-A-M-O again. So it's Ong, Namo, Gurudev, Namo. Essentially, it means I bow to the divine wisdom of the divine teacher within. So the other thing, though, that's really important about this is that sound Ong, the reason we use the sound Ong as opposed to Om is like out here. Ong resonates a part of the, in the center part of the head, there's a little area called the sella turcica. And the sella turcica, I believe, is the area which kind of encloses the pituitary gland. So we're trying to resonate the center part of the head while we're making the sound Ong. Because you'll notice, if you make the sound Ong correctly, that the tongue goes to the roof of the mouth. And what that does is that transmits the vibration of sound as it rises up. Like I said, the tongue will strike the roof of the mouth, and we're transferring the vibration through the tongue up into the sinus. So I'll go ahead and show you essentially what that looks like. Again, the eyes are closed on this one. The focus is at the brow point. And the chanting, it doesn't specify to do this in a long form or anything else. So what I just do is I do it kind of monotone and repetitive, but once again accentuating that sound ong, again resonating that ng. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. All right, so I think you get the theme there. So I just basically repeat at that pace for, again, it says, 3 to 11 minutes. Now to finish this exercise, what you want to do is you want to inhale, retain the breath. You want to press your arms together, but specifically the hands. You want to press those palms together, creating a seal. Again, contracting your head down. And then you want to roll your eyes up towards the crown of your head. So it's inhaling, press the palms together, roll the eyes up towards the crown of the head, retain the breath. Think about 10 to 20 seconds or as long as you possibly can. And I do suggest repeating this maybe 2 or 3 times. And then exhaling, relax your eyes, relax your hands, relax your shoulders, your chest, your belly, and meditate for at least 5 minutes. So you want to meditate for at least 5 minutes after this exercise. So also the one thing I should say is when you're exhaling while you're doing this pressure thing, make sure the exhales are forceful. So it's don't blow that air out. Again, do that 3 times, the breath retention. So I think that's all I want to mention about this particular exercise. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and I appreciate you watching. Thank you.